Diabetes Connections is brought to you by One Touch. Every touch is a step forward. By Dexcom. Take control of your diabetes and live life to the fullest with Dexcom. By Tandem Diabetes Care, makers of the t:slim X2 insulin pump. And by Real Good Foods, real food you feel good about eating.
This is Diabetes Connections with Stacey Sims.
This week, it was supposed to be a vacation at the happiest place on earth. Instead, their daughter was diagnosed with T1D at Disney World. But that's when some really good things started happening.
People were so kind. People called them to say, hey, if you need anything, let me know. We'd like to help you and your family out. It was overwhelming, the concern and the care that people just who don't know me just stepped up and said, hey, how can I help?
Jim tells us the story. It was almost exactly a year ago and explains how Disney and a very cool Disney community went above and beyond. In our community connection, a little bit about my community and how they were there when I needed a lift. I dropped my son off for a month away from home. And tell me something good, scholarships for college students with type 1, a big thank you, and a mountain milestone. This podcast is not intended as medical advice. If you have those kinds of questions, please contact your healthcare provider. Welcome to another week of Diabetes Connections. I am your host, Stacey Sims. So glad to have you tuning in. We aim to educate and inspire about type 1 diabetes by sharing stories of connection. And this week's story of connection really illustrates the power of community. I can't wait to tell you all about it. We'll get to it in just a little bit, but the timing is perfect because this is a story that happened at Disney World. And this week, the largest family diabetes conference in the world is happening right at Disney. It is Friends for Life. You'll be hearing a lot about that, of course. I'll be posting a ton on social media, and my goal is to try to, over the next week and really over the next months, to bring the show to you. Not everybody can go to conferences like this. I mean, there are costs, there are travel expensive and travel time. It's difficult. I would love to go to more conferences. So my goal is that you listen to these shows not with, FOMO. Is that what the kids say? That fear of missing out? But that you really feel like we're able to bring a lot of the information and happenings to you. And I'll try to link up in the Facebook group a lot of the interviews I've done over the years now of speakers at Friends for Life and things I've done on the vendor floor where a lot of the action happens and bring some of it to you. Diabetes Connections is brought to you by Dexcom. We started with Dexcom back in the olden days before Share. So trust me when I say using the Share and Follow apps makes a huge difference. Benny and I set parameters about when I'm going to call him or text, how long to wait, that kind of stuff. It helps us talk and worry about diabetes less. And if he's at a sleepover or away on a trip, it gives me so much peace of mind. It also helps if I need to troubleshoot with him because we can see what's been happening over the last 24 hours and not just at one moment. The alerts and alarms that we set also help us from keeping the highs from getting too high and help us jump on lows before they're a big issue. Internet connectivity is required to access separate Dexcom Follow app. To learn more, go to diabetes-connections.com and click on the Dexcom logo. You know how we're all in a lot of diabetes Facebook groups and other apps? Maybe you're on the Beyond Type 1 app, things like that. Well, I found this week's guest because we connected in a Disney app. Yep, it is part of a service, a book, a community called touringplans.com. The app itself is called Lines. This all started out with the unofficial guide to Disney World, one of those big travel books that we used to get. We used to buy books and then plan our vacations. But of course, now they have a website and they have an app. And in addition to fantastic park planning tools, they have an amazing chat feature. I'm on the chat even when I'm not planning a trip sometimes because it's just fun to keep up on what's going on. And it's a cool community. And you're going to see just how cool with this story. In July of 2018, last year, Jim posted that he needed to find an urgent care. He was in Disney World. I'll let him tell you more of the story, but he posted it on the Lines app in the chat, and he came back and told us what happened. Now, you can guess what happened since we're having him here on the show. His youngest daughter was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. It was last July, as I said, and it was actually during the Friends for Life conference that takes place on Disney property, but Jim and his family didn't know that. No one uses real names on the app, so it took us a while to find each other. Thank you, Toronto, to WDW for figuring out how to connect us so we could set this conversation up. And a couple of things you should know real quick before we jump in here. When Jim talks about DVC, he means Disney Vacation Club. That's a way to buy into the property at Disney. I guess the simplest way to put it, there are certain apartments or condos or rooms that you're basically buying kind of like a timeshare at Disney World. And Kidani is one of the resorts that has DVC, the Animal Kingdom Resort. And so when he's talking about Kidani, that's what he means. I think that's it. So here is my conversation with Jim. Jim, thanks so much for spending a little time with me. It was pretty wild to share your story without knowing you, to kind of follow along in the beginning. How are you? Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me. We're doing really well. Everything's great here.
1 year ago, you and your family were on vacation in Disney World, having a great time. Do you often go to Disney? Maybe we should back that up. Was that your first time there?
No, we're DVC members. We actually just bought. That was our very first DVC stay.
Very nice. So you were no strangers to Disney World. But what happened?
Nope.
Because it didn't go very well.
No, we were there, and the first day or two, my daughter just didn't seem to have her usual energy and didn't feel very well at all. And we just started to notice, my wife and I started to notice that things just weren't clicking in her usual mannerisms. And eventually we were on one of the buses, one of the Disney buses, on our way back to the resort. And we had finished our Disney cups, of course. And she said, "I know the cup is empty, Dad, but could I just see if I could get a couple of drops out of it?" And we thought, yeah, that's wrong. Something's not right here. So that was the signal right there. And at that point, we took steps to get her in and get her seen by medical staff.
Now, what's interesting about your story and the way I found out about it is we are both on this app. It's called Lines, but it's by the company Touring Plans. And this is an app where people can, share information and help each other out. So rather than logging on and saying, how do I get the shortest line for flights of passage, you said, how do I get to urgent care?
I said, I need help. Somebody tell me where to go because I'm from out of country. So not only am I not from Florida, but I'm not from the States. So I didn't have a clue where to go to get help. And I knew from talking on the Lines app that people had asked similar questions. Where do I go? And within minutes, I had a response, get to Celebration, get to the urgent care or to the hospital at Celebration.
Wow, it really did help.
It was great. As always, the people on Lines, they came through.
So what happened when you got to urgent care?
Well, to go a little bit before that, I just called down to the front desk and said, I'm going to need a taxi to get my daughter to the hospital. And whoever it was I was speaking to on the phone at the time said, you just come to the front lobby and we'll take care of you. I got to the front lobby and they said, there's a taxi out front for you, and here's a voucher. Take this, put this in your pocket, this will get you home. So Disney took care of us, getting us to the hospital. We walked in the door at Celebration Hospital and said, hi, there's something wrong with my daughter. And within minutes, they had us registered and waiting in the waiting room. And even only a couple minutes after that, we were back into the emergency. And the team there was phenomenal. They knew right off the bat, the lady who was taking care of us said right off the bat, she's diabetic, but I can't take steps until I get the blood work back.
Wow.
So she recognized it. She knew exactly what was going on. And then as soon as possible, they had her hooked up and getting help and on the way to recovery. But Celebration doesn't have a pediatric unit. So they ended up transferring us to Florida Orlando Hospital, the Walt Disney Pavilion.
Wow. It's got to be amazing what goes through your mind, because I know, well, at least I know I wasn't thinking very clearly when we went to the hospital. I almost hesitate to ask, but were you thinking, okay, diabetes, we've got to figure this out, and we're not even in our home country, let alone our home state. But on the other hand, were you thinking, we're still kind of in Disney World. This doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, we're at the happiest place on earth, and there's something wrong with my daughter.
Yeah.
So we didn't know what was going on. I think my wife figured it out pretty quickly. She's a lot smarter than I am. We'll give her full credit. But I think she figured out, I think it's diabetes, and off we went. And as I said, we got there, and in very short order, they had it figured out, and they knew what was going on, and they were taking steps. The only part that scared us was there's 4 of us. The ambulance can only transfer 2, so we sent my wife and my daughter off to Orlando, and my other daughter and I headed back to Disney World just to spend the night in the resort and then make our way to Orlando the next day to find them.
Wow.
It was petrifying, but Disney took such great care of us. You couldn't believe how well people just jumped in and did anything you could do to help.
What did they do?
Well, They called the cab to begin with, and they got us off there. When we got back to the hotel, it was Kidani, Animal Kingdom. My daughter and I walked back in, and the manager recognized that my other daughter wasn't with me. So he said, you just go get some sleep, and you come see me in the morning. So I went off in the morning back to the desk, and when I went back to the desk, they said, there's a cab already waiting for you. Here's another voucher. Take this, get back with your family in Orlando, and we'll see you when we get back, which in itself was phenomenal. But then it stepped up even greater because my eldest daughter, who was not diagnosed, of course, she went into the gift shop to buy a stuffed animal to take to the hospital for my younger daughter. The manager, Geeta, at the resort gift shop asked, oh, are you buying a souvenir? And my older daughter explained what she was doing. No, my little sister is in the hospital. And sure enough, by the time we got back a couple days later, we walked back into our resort room to find that she had gone into our room and totally decked out the place with all sorts of nice little treats and a message from Minnie Mouse, welcome back, princess. And then if that wasn't enough, we found messages on the phone from the nighttime manager calling over and over again over the course of the 2 or 3 days that we were in the hospital. We're really concerned about you. We haven't heard from you. We don't know what's going on. Here's my phone number. Please call us. You're a long way from home. We're your family. We'll take care of you.
Wow.
It was just beyond belief. It was everything you'd expect from Disney and hope for, that somebody would step up.
That really is amazing. Wow.
Yeah, it was great. And then, of course, the support on the Lines app was phenomenal. And even the Facebook group, the Kermit Facebook page group, they were sending messages. Hey, is everything okay? How's your daughter? How can we help? What do you need? People were so kind. People called them to say, hey, if you need anything, let me know. We'd like to help you and your family out. It was overwhelming, the concern and the care that people just who don't know me just stepped up and said, hey, how can I help?
I'm so glad to hear that. And then you're in the hospital for a few days, obviously, getting educated. Was your daughter out of danger at this point? Because I know sometimes that initial diagnosis can be a very dangerous time.
She came around very quickly. They told us that we had caught it in good time, that many people don't catch it as quickly as we did, and that she wasn't in as great a danger as could have happened had we waited another day or two to know what was going on. So we got really lucky that we noticed some of the symptoms and got her the help. She was tired, and she was using the washroom all the time, and extreme thirst. And again, I think it's my wife that gets all the credit for it. She clicked, okay, thirst, bathroom, fatigue. This is diabetes. Let's get her in. So we were again, very, very fortunate.
What is it like, and pardon my ignorance, to be in the U.S.? This is, as I said, this is not your home country. You're from Canada, and have to go through our healthcare system. Was that difficult for you all just from a red tape position?
To begin with, it was petrifying, because we didn't know how it was going to happen. Thankfully, we had purchased travel insurance and health insurance, so we were good there. And that just, everything stepped into place. We talked to the people at the hospital, said we're from out of country, here's our insurance coverage. The insurance company stepped up and helped. That all kind of just happened in the background, and everyone we spoke to just said, you take care of your daughter. We'll take care of everything else.
So when you say you purchased health insurance, just again, if you could explain that, you purchased it for the trip?
We purchased it for the trip. We have health insurance because here in Canada, we have universal health care. If we get sick, we go to the hospital, and it's covered. It's just paid for. And anytime we're out of province, or especially out of country, we don't have that. So we would have to pay out of pocket for any health care costs.
Got it. In the U.S., that varies.
We purchased that ahead of time.
Yeah, that varies because we can, depending on our private health insurance, which obviously varies greatly from person to person and company to company, and that's a whole other show. You know, when we travel abroad, depending on the policy, it may already be covered. So I wasn't quite sure about what you meant by that. That's really interesting. Education-wise, did your daughter, was she receptive to learning things right away? I mean, it's difficult for everybody, but how did she react? Right back to Jim in just a moment. We'll get his answer to that question. But first, Diabetes Connections is brought to you by One Touch. Have you ever tested your blood sugar with a meter and were unsure about the meaning of your results? We'll take the guesswork out of your numbers with the One Touch VarioFlex meter. It uses color short technology to instantly show you when your or your loved one's blood sugar numbers are low, indicated by blue, in range, green, or high, red, so you can quickly get on with your life. You can also use the meter's built-in Bluetooth smart technology to seamlessly sync with the OneTouch Reveal mobile app, available now as a free download for Android devices on Google Play and Apple devices on the App Store. OneTouch, because taking a step forward starts with seeing where you are. Now back to Jim talking about how his daughter reacted when she found out she'd been diagnosed with type 1.
She was scared, and there were a lot of tears at the beginning until we figured out what was going on. But the team at the Walt Disney Pavilion, they were amazing with the education, with the nurses, the doctors, the specialists, the home life team. They were amazing. They came in, they made both of my daughters feel comfortable because, as I said, my other daughter was there then just sitting in the room with us while we're trying to figure everything out. And she's expecting a week at Disney, and she's sitting in a hospital room watching her sister without understanding what's going on. So the learning came quickly because it had to. They told us at the hospital, you're here with us at least until we can guarantee that you're okay to keep care of your daughter. So we figured it out really quickly, and my wife and I did a lot of the work together, making sure that everything was okay. And then by our next trip to Disney, my daughter had things down pat. So she takes care of almost everything herself now, from the CGM monitors to the pump. She's learned the whole gambit in about a year, and she is almost independent. We still guide her and watch her, but she says, oh, no, I need to do this, and oh, I need to do this. And
right.
We pretty much give her that freedom because she has to be able to do it, and no better way than for her to go ahead and do it.
You said the next time you went to Disney. When did you go back? How soon was the next visit?
We had actually planned 2 summer visits.
Oh,
As I
nice.
said, we're DVC members, and that was our first ever stay. So we had been DVC members on site for about a day and a half, 2 days when all this happened.
Geez.
And it was just a quick trip down to the Animal Kingdom Lodge. And then we had planned to go back in August. So we went back in August, and that was a really steep learning curve, type 1 at Disney, because figuring out carb counts is really challenging at Disney when you don't know diabetes.
Well, and it can be challenging when you do know diabetes because they don't offer carb counts at Disney World.
No, they don't, unless it's a prepackaged item.
Yeah.
You're figuring it out. But back in August, of course, she'd only been diabetic for a month and a half,
Right.
so we didn't even have those baselines. Now we have a pretty good idea. Okay, a hot dog is going to run this many carbs, a bag of chips is going to run this many carbs, an apple is this many carbs, and we have those baselines now. But back then, we didn't even have that. We were still trying to figure it out based on the charts and things that they had given us at the hospital.
What did you find most challenging at that first return visit? Was it just going back? Was it, doing shots or using a pump in the park? Was it the carb counts?
It was the carb count. It was figuring out what we were going to be eating and how we were going to do that. The insulin pens she picked up really quickly. And I remember the first time we were there, we were at a restaurant, and she asked, can I go to the washroom to give myself my insulin? And I said, absolutely not. This is insulin. This is life-sustaining. You need this. We're not going to stand up and make a spectacle of you in front of the restaurant, but you're going to do your insulin right here at the table. And this is part of life, and people need to understand that. So she really learned really quickly, this is not something that I'm doing wrong that I need to hide. This is part of my life now, and I'm just going to wear it like a badge of honor.
How did she react to that? Did she immediately take it like a badge of honor? Was she like, Dad, I don't want to do it at the table?
No, she took it pretty well the first time. There have been other times when she said, I'd like to do it here. And now if it's a matter of she wants to have some privacy, she can have whatever privacy she'd like.
Sure.
So it's now up to her. If she wants to do something quietly on the side, that's up to her. But I never wanted her to feel like she had to hide something, because she's not doing anything wrong.
When you came back, did anyone from the resort remember you all? I mean, it hadn't been that long a period of time. I'm curious if they were kind of like, oh, you're back.
We didn't stay at the same resort. We were at a different resort, so no one recognized us that way. But we have had people at the resort recognize us different times. But when we needed them, they were there. They were phenomenal. Even some little things like we came back and it was 3 days later, and they said, you've missed some reservations. We'll take care of those $10 charges. If those gift reservations were on there, we'll take care of that. And you probably missed some fast passes. Let's see what you missed from your fast passes, and let's see what we can do to make that up to you. Because they recognize that some of our big rides that we were really looking forward to going on, we'd missed. So they couldn't always get us what we had missed, but they did their best. And it was just phenomenal. That whole trip while we were there in July, anytime the staff did see us, they were so friendly and outgoing, and how are we doing now, princess? And it was overwhelming how amazingly people took care of us.
What a remarkable experience to have one of the lowest points of your childhood, getting diagnosed with diabetes, and then one of your highest points, all that personal attention from Disney World. Do the girls kind of talk about it in that way?
They do. It was hard to get diagnosed while we were away from home, but if you're going to get diagnosed, I can't think of a better place to be taken care of than Disney World. They talk about it. My youngest, who is diagnosed, she still struggles a little bit as she approaches her 1-year anniversary. We've talked about what we're going to do to mark the celebration, and she is hesitant. I don't want to go back to Kidani because I think she associates Kidani with becoming diabetic. So we've tried to reassure her she is never again going to be diagnosed with diabetes. That's never going to be an issue for her. So we'll try and figure out ways. We went back in August, and we took the bus over to Kidani just to walk around and visit it, just to make sure that it doesn't become this negative place.
Yeah.
She does talk about all the great things, but I think a lot of the greatness was behind the scenes that she didn't see. Mm. She was still either in the hospital or trying to figure out what was going on. And as I said, our goal at that point was, we're in a foreign country. We're learning how to keep our daughter going here with what she needs to know. Our goal, and pretty much the goal of the people at the hospital, was, we're going to teach you how to keep your daughter alive until you can get back home and set up with your home medical care. So we were kind of on emergency management at that point. And now, a year later, she's just living her life.
So, Jim, let me ask you a little bit more about Disney World, if I could. People who use that app that we talked about, and as you said, they're in the Facebook group, these are people who love Disney, who definitely go more than once. When did that start for you? Is that something you grew up with? Is it something you discovered when you had kids?
We started going maybe 8 years ago. I'd always wanted to go when I was a kid, and it just wasn't an option for my family. So when my girls got old enough, I said, we're going to go. We've got to go. So we happened to luck out at a time when the Canadian dollar was strong, and there was a free dining, and we jumped on the bandwagon and went to Disney World. And coming around and seeing the castle for the first time was just awe-inspiring. It was everything I had hoped for, and the customer service was amazing, and the place was clean, and it was safe, and it was all-inclusive. It was everything we could possibly want in a family vacation, and we were hooked. So years and years later, we finally decided to go with the DVC option, and now we're booked in for life. But as far as the Lines app is concerned, I picked up an ultimate guide at my library, and eventually ended up getting the touring plans website, and I booked in through there and got myself an account and stumbled upon the Lines app. And I think, like most people, for the first little while, I just kind of watched and looked around and saw what was going on, and really discovered it was my kind of humor. Mm-hmm. Lots of funny comments, lots of people being silly, and lots of people being incredibly helpful. That anything you need, the same question gets asked over and over and over again, and nobody gets upset. Yeah. People just answer the question. What do you need? And it was more than just, hey, I'm done this ride, where should I go next? In my situation, it was, my daughter's sick, help me. And again, as I said, these people that I've never met just jumped into action and took care of us. It's kind of a family outside my family. I know it sounds cliche, but it's become that.
Was there anything that you wanted to tell of your story that I didn't get around to, that I didn't ask about?
I don't think so, other than the great things that you're doing here. You were one of the people that reached out to me and said, hey, everything will be okay. And then, again, you attempted to get a hold of me for this interview, and I hadn't checked my email, and another one of the Lines people jumped in and said, hey, someone's looking for you. So we kind of made a connection back between there. I should mention the night manager's name was Wendy. He was amazing. I had mentioned the gift shop manager, Gita, so I should definitely give Wendy credit as well. And there were so many other people, too, that it was such a whirlwind of emotion, I didn't have a chance to write down everyone's name. I'd love to say thanks to the staff at Kidani. If anybody is actually listening from Kidani, you took care of us when we needed you most. And it was overwhelming. I can't tell you how much we're grateful for all of the care and support we got.
Wow, that's just incredible. Just incredible.
Yeah, I'm just looking through a couple notes that I made to make sure that I don't forget to thank anybody. The team at Celebration Hospital, the team at the Walt Disney World Pavilion at Florida Hospital Orlando, Turner Drugs. They were my contact because we needed supplies. And we got the initial insulin supplies sent to us from the hospital, but little things like, it's Florida in July, and insulin's supposed to be kept cool. So what do you do? So we contacted Turner Drugs and got a couple of things, and they sent us over a cooler pack that we could use to get our stuff home on the flight. and take care of things while we were in the parks. Just, again, as I said, everyone just stepping in and being so kind when we needed help.
Well, Jim, thank you so much for sharing your story. I'm so glad that everybody's doing well, and I hope your daughter finds the right way she will to mark that anniversary. She'll do it.
Thanks. I really hope she will, and I'm confident she will. She's a great kid.
You're listening to Diabetes Connections with Stacey Sims.
We've actually talked about touring plans and the Disney Lines app before on this show. I had Len Testa on a couple of years ago. He heads up the whole thing. It's his brainchild, and he does all the amazing math that, the way they figure out the wait times, all the stuff that you really use when you're doing vacation planning at Disney World. Well, Len came on the show because he's using that math, I call it Disney math, for type 2 diabetes medication recommendations. He's creating a program to help doctors figure out pricing and other medicines that people are taking and interactions. And, with type 2 diabetes, quite often there are a lot of other factors going on. So it was really incredible to talk to him, and I'll link up that interview. He also has some great Disney recommendations and some fun stories. I love Len. And I love that Disney Lines community. It's as good as Jim says, and really thrilled that he was able to get the help he needed and find all of that support. That's what community and connecting is all about. Which brings me directly to our community connection. Our community connection this week is all about a tough moment for me and a reminder of how much we do need each other. Community Connection is brought to you by Tandem. And, Benny just finished 8th grade. And around here, this is the age where kind of the hangouts begin. Kids start going to the mall or downtown, and they just hang out and they walk around without us parents around. Benny loves just having his t:slim X2 insulin pump in his pocket. He's got the Dexcom sensor on. He can see his BG on his pump. He is well experienced with what he needs to do. He knows to monitor his symptoms, confirm the pump's settings are correct, and pay attention to potential alerts. And he always has his diabetes bag with all of his backup supplies. He's 14. He doesn't want to constantly be checking things, pulling out a pump controller or a meter. I'm so glad we have this technology to help us during this transitional time, tween to teen. To find out more about Benny's pump, go to diabetes-connections.com and click on the Tandem logo. Longtime listeners know that every summer, in addition to diabetes camp, we also send Benny, my son, to regular sleepaway camp for a month. And while he loves it, it is always a stressful time for me, as you can imagine. I won't go through everything because we've talked about this before, but if you're not familiar, this is a month-long camp with a full medical staff that is not trained in type 1 diabetes, though. So the first year, we really had to go and talk to them about what to look for and kind of train them in certain things. And this is Benny's 7th year at this camp, which I cannot believe. Time is flying around here. But at this point, I would say that the medical staff is very well versed in type 1 diabetes. But Benny does have to do everything himself. He has to do all blood sugar checks before he had a Dexcom. He has to do all site changes. They won't touch him. They will help him, but they will not give him injections. They will not change pump sites and CGM insertions, that sort of thing. But they will support him. And of course, they'll let us know if there are any difficult symptoms or things to look out for. There is no cell phone service at this camp, so we have never used the Share, even after we got CGM and even after we got the Share capability. He just now, this summer, it's the first summer that he actually has his BG on his pump, which is really great. So he didn't need a receiver to schlep around, one less thing to carry around camp. But I'm sharing this because I want to tell you about drop-off. In years past, when Benny was younger, we would go one day early, talk to the counselors, talk to the staff, really go through in depth on everything he needed to do. 2 years ago, we started just going at drop-off and staying as long as they wanted us to, going through everything and really drilling down. But this year I thought, gosh, he knows what he's doing. We have a great routine. The camp knows him. So on the way to camp, I said to Benny, hey, why don't you handle drop-off this year? I'll be there. Anybody wants to talk to me, I'll talk to them. But you talk to the nurses. You talk to everybody. You check the boxes and, inform them of what's changed and what's the same. And he loved it. He was all over them. And I'll give you a quick hint of what we do. Just very simply, we try to give as little responsibility to Benny as possible, which sounds crazy, but he has so much responsibility at this camp that if they can help him, it's really valuable. So, for example, he takes Traceba now once a day, a long-acting injection. Well, there's a ton of kids who take medication at breakfast. So we just treat Traceba as his morning meds. And the nurse brings it to breakfast with everybody else's medication, allergy meds or asthma or whatever anybody's taking, brings it right to him. And when they do a med call, he goes up, takes his shot, no big deal. Pump insets, they bring that as lunch medication. And they keep track every 3 days. He changes it. And if he changes it sooner, he's got to go to the infirmary to get a new one, or he's got to just reach into his backpack and do it. He lets them know. So this has been a way to really have them work with us while he's still doing everything himself. So I had him bring the supplies and check off all the boxes, and I thought I'd be standing right behind him. But what actually happened was I was distracted, talking to my mom friends, saying hello to people, just being the general chatterbox that I enjoy being. And then I turned around and he said, "We're all set, Mom, time to go." And I looked at the nurse and she gave me a thumbs up, and I've known this nurse for as long as Benny's been going to camp, and I got a little teary. Now, she had beat me to it. She had gotten a little teary because she's known Benny since he's 8 years old. And he is now... He's 5'11". He's like 210. He's got a size 13 shoe. He's a big dude. And when she saw him this year, she was pretty emotional too about, oh my God, he's growing up. So we're like crying and hugging, and Benny's just mortified. So we dropped him off at the cabin. We had a great talk. There's a woman who supported him from really day one. She's just been amazing, Amy. And she comes to the cabin now, and we have a brief talk with the counselors. And here's what she said. She was so great. She said, "Guys, you can talk to Benny about diabetes. You can ask any questions that you have, but don't make a big fuss of it in the middle of things. Don't yell about it in the middle of activities. Just, if you have a question, just ask him. But don't ask him what he's eating, and don't question what he's doing, because he knows his stuff." And I was so taken aback by that. How cool was that? And Benny just went on to say, "Yeah, you can ask me anything, but I've got this." But especially the food, I thought, was a really important point that she brought up. And then I left. It was like zip, 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 goodbye, Mom. And I got my hugs, and I got to see his cabin, and he was with his friends. But I was really, I had really mixed feelings driving home, because even though it was my dumb idea to let him take more responsibility and handle drop-off, I didn't get to do my mom stuff. So I called my mom, and I called my sister. But, if they're listening, don't take this the wrong way. I didn't get my fix. So I called my friend Anne, who I've known for years and years. Anne has a son, Brady, who is the same age as Benny, and has type 1 diabetes. And I just needed somebody who'd been there. I needed somebody who knew what I was talking about and why I was emotional and what was going on. And she was there for me. We didn't talk for long. We didn't talk about much. She just basically said, "I get it." And that's all I needed to hear. And then the next day, camp posted pictures. Benny's looking like he's having a great time. I'll see him in a month. I won't get any Dexcom numbers between now and then. Of course, he'll call me if they have any issues. Last year, we adjusted pump settings once or twice, but he's off. Whew, boy. It's a good thing I'm busy this month. Oh, my goodness. All right, time for Tell Me Something Good. So much going on here. College scholarships, a kid who left his bag behind, and country roads. Tell Me Something Good is brought to you by Real Good Foods. Now, have you heard about the CEO of Real Good Foods and kind of how they got involved in the diabetes community? Well, the product is great. They're low carb, high in protein, amazing, different products. They're adding stuff all the time. Breakfast sandwiches, Italian food, so yummy. But the CEO got a letter a while back from a 9-year-old with type 1, and it was all about how he was so happy to have a yummy pizza that he could eat with his friends, that his parents felt good about, and that only had 8 carbs. Real Good Foods isn't a diabetes company, per se, but that letter made them realize they wanted to do more in our community. So I was thrilled this year when they came on board as a sponsor. We love the pizza. We don't really eat low carb all the time, but it's a great pizza. They have a cauliflower crust, which is really crispy. They have it's like a chicken crust. It's really different, and it tastes great. My husband likes to put that in a frying pan and really crisp it up. Benny loves it. And he chooses the Real Good Food items all the time. Find out more at diabetes-connections.com and click on the Real Good Foods logo. Our first Tell Me Something Good is all about the Diabetes Scholars. We talked about this a while back. I hope you got the information and were able to apply. The Diabetes Scholars class of 2019 will be awarded 56 scholarships for students living with type 1. This is a record number for the program, and this means over $140,000 in combined scholarships are going out. Scholarships are made possible by individual donors and partner organizations. including Dexcom, Medtronic, Insulet, and JDRF, and 17 scholars were specifically provided by individual or family donors. This is such a great thing, not just for the people who, of course, are getting these scholarships, but the Diabetes Scholars Program came close to closing its doors recently. So a big hats off to Beyond Type 1 that stepped in and really helped it out. I mean, Diabetes Scholars Foundation was founded in 2018, and since then, they have awarded more than $1.6 million in college scholarships. So kudos to them. Kudos to Beyond Type 1, and congratulations to those who won the scholarships. Bookmark this for your kids going to college in the next couple of years. This is great stuff. Our next Tell Me Something Good story comes to us from Facebook, and this was posted by Thomas. And he says, I want to thank Shamir Williams. She is the security guard that works at the Camden Aquarium, which I believe is in New Jersey. My son Ethan has type 1 diabetes. While he was on a trip to the aquarium, he misplaced his bag. And his wife called in a panic. Everything he needed was in the bag, and Ethan didn't realize he lost it until he got back home, and the aquarium was closed, and Ethan started to panic. So Thomas was able to get in touch with the security guard, with Ms. Williams, who works the night shift. He explained the situation, and she called back 30 minutes later. She had found the bag. She had taken time out of her day, he says, to search the whole aquarium for my son's insulin. It makes me realize that for all of the people there are in the world, there are some great people still out there. I gave her a big hug and thanked her. He writes, we exchanged numbers, and I told her if there is ever anything she needs to, please give me a call. I'm going to bring Ethan to meet her so he can thank her in person. And then he writes, please share this. Everybody needs to know what a nice thing Ms. Williams did for my family. That's awesome. I mean, what a great story. We've all been there, right? Oh, that diabetes bag, when you lose it or you misplace it, or you don't know where it is. So stressful. I'm glad it worked out. It's great when people go above and beyond. Okay, and update on 50 in 50, Project 50 in 50. This is Michael and Patrick. I've been talking about them for a couple of weeks now. They are on a mission to summit the highest peak in all 50 states in 50 days or less. Now, as I am taping this show, I believe they have finished up summits 16, 17, 18 in the last 24 hours. And that included West Virginia. And in John Denver's beautiful home state, we got a serenade.
Country road, take me home to the place I belong. West Virginia, Mountain Mama, take me home. Country road.
What you can't see, of course, is that Patrick is on Michael's shoulders and he's playing the guitar. Oh my God, they are bananas. I hope you're following Project 50 in 50 on social media. If you're following me, I'm actually reposting a lot of their stuff on Instagram and at the Stacey Sims public page, the Newslady page on Facebook, sharing almost all of their posts. They're either having the best time or they're getting a little loopy. Maybe a combination of both. We've been messaging back and forth. We're going to try to find a way to do an interview with them. Probably not for another 2 weeks or so, just with all of my travels. But I'll continue to bring you updates of their exploits. This is just an amazing project because they are also meeting people with type 1 along the way and inviting them to climb with them. We had an incredible meetup here in North Carolina, a really big one. Unfortunately, I could not go. There was an option to drive. Don't think I was going to hike. But I couldn't go. I'm really sorry to miss that, but I love following along. All right, if you have a Tell Me Something Good, you don't have to be on a mission to summit in all 50 states. Just drop me a line in the Facebook group or at Stacey@diabetes-connections.com. Now, next week, because I'm away, I'm going to run a classic episode. This one from 2015 when I talked to Richard Vaughn, and he has lived with type 1 diabetes for more than 70 years. 70. He was diagnosed as a kid in the 40s. It's an amazing story. He's a great guy, and that's coming at you next week. Thanks to my editor, John Buchanan from Audio Editing Solutions. Thank you for listening and supporting this show. I love talking to you, hearing your stories, and finding out more about you guys in the Facebook group. And I'm hoping that I get to meet a lot of you at Friends for Life. Please come say hi. I'm Stacey Sims. I'll see you back here next week.
Diabetes Connections is a production of Stacey Sims Media. All rights reserved, all wrongs avenged.